Pam.
Hello, Margita.
I'm very glad that you will be able to share your experience with us. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
Can you introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Pam Schweizer. I've been working in the field of reminiscence for well over 30 years, probably 37 years now. And I find it of such a fascinating area that I've been quite unable to retire, although I'm going to be 74 in May, so the time is right, but the work still fascinates me.
Can you, in a nutshell, describe what is reminiscence theatre?
Well, reminiscence theatre is many things to many people, actually, but the key element is that stories are gleaned from older people, usually around a particular theme, which may be a period in time or a particular topic. And then those memories are brought together in a shared end product, which may be a theatre performance, most likely a theatre performance, which may be done by professional actors, or which may be done by amateur actors, or by older people themselves. But in all cases, the material of the play is the stories that older people have agreed to record and to share. Very often, the link is even closer between the product and the beginning of the process, in that the words of the interviews are used in the script of the play.
How did it all start for you?
Well, I had been working as an education officer between old and young in an organization where my task was to develop education programs which brought old and young together. And one of the two lovely projects, actually, with secondary school pupils, in which they enacted the memories of the older people they came together with, and my own background is in theatre. The marriages were invariably successful. The young and the old combined together to produce energy and effective theatre, really.
And in your experience, what is the benefit of applying reminiscence theatre, working with reminiscence theatre?
Well, right from the beginning, I could see the powerful benefits of reminiscing for some of the older people. For example, one of these very early shows I was talking to you about, when the performers were secondary school children, you could see the energy coming back into the older people when they were sharing their stories, especially when they were sharing those stories in a group, because one person's memory would trigger another, and people would be laughing and remembering things they hadn't thought of for a long time, and that spontaneity of recall is more likely to happen when the reminiscence is in a group. But it's also that the older people were the experts, so when the young people were performing the older people's memories, they had to come back and ask questions of the older people to get more detail, more depth. And this conveyed the idea to the young people that the older people were important and to be respected. And eventually, when they came to perform the piece, the opinion of the older people was very important, very affirming for the young people, and very affirming, of course, for the older people to see their memories staged and to recognize the stories they'd told and to see that they were now the stuff of a drama. The problem was, I suppose, that the school children and the young people involved in that sort of exercise would only do maybe one or two performances because it was usually part of their school drama program or something like that. And it seemed to me very important that all this wonderful material should travel more widely. And the way I saw it, it would be best to have a professional theatre company because they could do 30, 40 performances, they could travel widely, and more people would be engaged in sharing their memories, hearing others' memories, with the intention that when the theatre came to the sheltered housing unit or the old people's home or the community centre, they would start a buzz of conversation and remembering which could be picked up and taken forward by the workers in those organisations. You know, people found that there were people living in their care homes and in their coming to visit their community centres who had wonderful stories to tell. And these stories were triggered by the plays that we used to tour and also by the subsequent groups that were held to discuss the stories in the play. And there was a third element to this too, which was that quite early on in recording the memories of older people, many of whom were in their 90s, it was clear that if we didn't give these memories some kind of permanent life, they would just disappear. And theatre is a very evanescent form. It's there while it's happening and then it's gone. So from very early on, we decided that every time we made a play, we'd do a book. And the book would contain the great stories, edited and grouped, but always in the original words. And this meant that after a performance, we could leave copies of the book, and people would read little passages, and that as well would trigger memories. And those books, gosh, we're moving forward in time, but those books are now digitized in many cases, and we've made a website, the Reminiscence Theatre Archive, of a lot of the shows resulting from that method. But it doesn't necessitate professional actors. We've done a lot of work with, as I said before, students and young people, and amateur groups as well. And in recent years with people with dementia as well. And there, the group workers, the group facilitators, have developed a different kind of reminiscence theatre, which is small, spontaneous scenes, which enable people with dementia to express themselves, especially when their verbal capacities are reducing.
Can you say a few words about the theory behind the method reminiscence theatre?
Well, I think the theory lies in the practice. We're tied in very closely with positive dementia care, which is a worldwide movement in the face of the exponential increase in the incidence of dementia and its impact on society. And in positive dementia care, the idea is that instead of measuring the deficits and concentrating on the disease and on the cure, of which there is none, it's better to enable people to go on communicating and functioning and to have a sense of the value of their lives. That's particularly true with people with dementia and with families living with dementia, but it's also true, I found, in all sorts of other kinds of reminiscence theatre, including professional theatre, that older people who are asked to tell their stories do seem to feel better as a result. Now, I don't know whether you'd call that a theory, but it's certainly tied in with the positive dementia care movement. It's also connected to validation, which involves setting a value on what the older person says and working with what they say. It's also, I think, important to emphasize the respect and the self-esteem that come out of this process, the respect on the part of younger people, whether they're professional actors or not, who need the input of the older people, and the older people themselves who feel consulted, who feel that they were not just the victims of the past, but active participants in the past. And so, if you like, the psychological theory is that by acknowledging and emphasizing the value of older people's memories, their own sense of self-esteem is heightened, and they then function better in the world, are more confident to take risks, to express themselves, to have opinions. I think, again, psychologically speaking, being heard is something that doesn't happen very often for a lot of older people, whether because of isolation or because of incapacity of one kind or another. But having somebody here who is really listening in a very focused way to what you have to say, and who needs that information and is going to use it for a theatrical outcome, it's a very unusual experience. Far more common is a feeling of being cut off, and we've heard that story, and yes, that was interesting the first time, or you don't understand, it's not like that anymore. And I think this positivity and acute listening and reflection, and then representation, interpretation of the stories heard, and performance to a high standard of the stories heard, is very gratifying and improves people's functioning. Certainly, you're asking about the benefits. Certainly in the case of the people with dementia, we've been running a course in that area which involves theatre, amongst other arts, to help older people with dementia to express themselves successfully and effectively. And there's no doubt that capacities improve in a time in their lives and their condition when it would be more likely to decrease.